Holy shit. I have no fucking clue what's going on. This is a lovely sunset. It's so bright out here, I can barely even see the screen, but I believe we are recording. Yes, we are recording. Okay, cool. Thank you for 50k. That's kind of crazy. It's been really quick. I started like a year ago, and here we are, halfway to 100k already. That feels good, and it's nice to have had so much support, positive comments from people as well. Like, my comment section is actually crazy. You guys are, one, smart, and two, way too kind to me. Hype me up a lot, and it gives me enthusiasm, so thank you. Hello. The first question is, what made you want to study philosophy? I don't know if it counts as studying, it's kind of just a hobby. It's just something I'm really interested in. Like, big questions in general have always captured my interest. And so, when I read, it happens to be stuff related to philosophy most of the time. Except recently, because I've been reading a series called Red Rising, which is just pop sci-fi, but it's very good. I recommend that. But yeah, I've always been interested since I was a kid in like big questions. I remember when I was literally in primary school, I would think myself into this weird little thing. I haven't been able to do it since I was a kid, but I used to think really hard about, like, I'd imagine the universe and space and all the planets, and I would just start deleting things. I'd be like, but what if there was nothing? And I'd be like, okay, what would that look like? Well, there's loads of planets, so take away the planets. Then I'd be like, okay, now there's like stars and there's gas. Take away the stars and the gas. Okay, now take away like the space itself. Now there's just time. Now take away time. And I'd start tweaking out in like the playground with my eyes closed, just like, oh my god, having a proper autism attack. But yeah, ever since I was a kid, I was interested in big questions, and philosophy is about the big questions. So, top 3 goated or S-tier fruits. Number 1's got to be mango. Number 2 has got to be watermelon. And number 3 has got to be kiwi. Anybody who gives you a different list than that is an alien, and you should slap them. If all your videos were deleted and erased from the internet right now, and all you had were the next 60 seconds, what's the most useful thought you would leave to the world? That's a pretty hard one. I'd probably just say chill out. Stop grasping and holding on so hard. Opinion on hoeflation. Oh boy. I just took another look at him, funnily enough, recently. I found out about him a couple of years ago, watched a couple of his videos and didn't look back, but now that I'm sort of in this space, I figured I would pay some more attention again. And a lot of what he says makes sense. It does. The problem isn't necessarily with any particular thing that he says or the content of it, but I do get an icky feeling when I watch those videos. It all feels a little bit too convenient. It all feels a little bit too soothing to my ego. The meta-narratives that sort of come out of the individual facts that he gives you tend to be narratives that shift blame away from me as a young man a little bit too much. They're a little bit too pleasant to hold on to. And I think I tend to be quite, as everybody should be, I believe, suspicious of beliefs that taste too good. I think if a belief tastes too good, there's a solid chance, or at least it increases the likelihood, that you'll forego a certain level of requisite logical due diligence or honesty in order to hold the beliefs, because they feel good to believe. Nietzsche had a good quote about this. It was something like that they bring pleasure to those who hold them, or to those to whom they concern, should not furnish arguments in their favor, but rather err as to caution. In which he says exactly the thing I just said, but in language that's harder to understand. Question from Benji Taylor. This is an OG supporter of the channel. He was here on like the 3rd video or something. Anyway, he says, what advice would you give to your 16-year-old self? I'd probably just say you can stop the drugs now. Actually, you don't need to do any more drugs. I know you're getting it out of your system when you're young, but I think you're good. I think you can save the extra 2 years that are about to happen, because those extra 2 years probably gave me minor brain damage. More general advice I would give is, if you want to be able to say that you got big balls, if you're a big hunk of courage, if you're a manly man, then tell the truth more. If you're so courageous, tell the truth more. And see what happens. Asks, how do you research for videos? Generally it's just from books. I just read a fair amount of philosophy and stuff, and I watch podcasts, the same shit everybody else does. I don't necessarily research for particular videos. I just think about stuff a lot, and I make videos about the stuff that I'm thinking about. But I guess the simple answer is books. Which leads us on to the next question, which is some book recommendations for a beginner. I think one of the most important books anybody can read in 2025 is The Righteous Mind by Jonathan Haidt. It's a book that I only just picked up recently. I'd spent the past year, to be honest, mainly reading Nietzsche and Dostoevsky, because you have to spend so much time reading them to know what the fuck they're talking about. But The Righteous Mind comes at lots of the same ideas that were posited by specifically Nietzsche about psychology and about morality. But it arrives at those conclusions from a scientific lens, and the book takes you through the story of how those discoveries were come to by Jonathan Haidt and his colleagues. So it's entertaining to read, it's interesting, it's written in a very modern way, and it's easy to digest, but the truths that it contains are more relevant than ever today, where everybody is convinced that they are basically fucking Gandhi and that everybody else sucks and that they're great and that if only they had control over the world it would all be perfect. The Righteous Mind does a good job at pointing out your own insufficiencies and generally just refining people's understanding of the relationship between humans and the truth, and also the purpose that morality serves and the purpose that morally rationalizing things serves. There's a whole bunch of shit in there, and it ties it all into politics and contention and culture and all of this. It's really good. Other books that I would recommend, The Brothers Karamazov by Dostoevsky is definitely a good one. It's long, but it's worth it if you're interested in existential stuff. If you're not, then bog it off. Don't bother plaguing yourself with the types of questions that he asks. Like I said earlier, if you want some good fiction that's just easy to read, Red Rising is just great. It kind of plays out like a Maze Runner or Hunger Games or something, but yeah, it's just good and entertaining. The entire Mythos series by Stephen Fry is incredible. I might even reread that. It goes through all the Greek myths, through about the gods, through to the myths about the heroes, and then takes you through the whole Battle of Troy from the Iliad. Goes on to the Odyssey. They're coming out with a film of that next year, actually, so maybe don't read the book if you want to watch the film first, because now I know the story and the film's going to be, it might be made cooler because of that, to be fair. But anyway, yeah, it's a really good series. Oh, this is a painful one. What motivates you? How much of your work has been simple momentum upkeep versus actively pushing against laziness? I've always been very afraid of boredom and of living a boring life, and so that has motivated me a lot over the years. I've also been afraid of, I guess, fundamentally living a meaningless life, and so that's directed a lot of my attention and energy. But in the day-to-day, I don't really have a rush of motivation every day. It's more just like I have to do certain things if I want certain outcomes, and so I do those things. It's not like I'm filled with life force and energy. I'm quite tired a lot of the time. There's a lot that I want out of life, so I try and do my best to maintain a sustainable pace. Humans are persistence hunters, so if you just keep going at a sustainable pace, you will make progress. So that's what I try to do. Do you think quitting school earlier made you like this? If you finished it, what would Angelo do? What would Angelo be or do? First off, What do you mean by like this? You mean autistic? I don't know. I think I was always like this, and that's why I left school. But leaving school definitely allowed the, I guess, my natural self to expand into the empty space freed up by the absence of the structure provided by school. So yes, to some degree, it amplified what was already there. But I think I've always just been a little bit autistic and interested in big questions. What are you going to use as motivators to reach your next milestone, 100k subscribers? I'm not really sure, to be honest. There's a lot of stuff that I just think needs to be said, and so I'm trying to say it. And there's also the financial factor. I don't really have any income, so I kind of need to grow the audience in order to get income. AdSense is a bit of a myth, so that's a motivator, just a practical one. But you're looking for something grander, and that's what I said at the first point, which is just that there's a whole lot of bullshit in the world at the moment, and there's a lot of people who are cutting corners intellectually, morally, politically, and we're noticing the consequences of that socially. And I think that there's space for people like me and millions of other people like me to just think things through and talk about them so that other people can hopefully be led down a rabbit hole that leads to somewhere a little bit better than where we're going, because I think there's just a lot of dissatisfaction and unnecessary suffering at the moment, and lots of it can be eliminated by just being a little bit more diligent and honest about things. And so yeah, that's what I'm trying to do with the channel, is bring that diligence and that honesty to a place that doesn't have much of it.
Hello, sir. Welcome back.
Being mocked by the local youths. I think you spoke about this briefly, but not certain, but I'd like your insights on how to use self-criticism for actual growth rather than discouragement. I think this just comes down to honesty again. Like, there'll be a glint of intuition in you when you're using self-criticism in order to grow versus when you're using it as a sort of reactionary whip to just self-flagellate and tell yourself off for the slight moment of catharsis you get by being in the position of the punisher, even though you are also the punished. Yeah, it's kind of a cheap way of going about it. It's reactionary, but actual self-criticism generally is approached with more curiosity than intent to punish. And so if you ever sense that intent to punish within you, to sort of lacerate yourself for certain actions or character traits that you have, I don't think you're going to get anywhere with that. I think lots of it just comes down to paying attention, like paying good internal attention to yourself. There are often indicators, internal psychological and emotional indicators, when you're slightly going off course. The problem isn't that they're not there, it's that we just don't really pay attention to them. I think this is one of the main problems that the dopaminification of everyday life brings, is that with quick outs, when you feel that sense of discomfort that comes when your subconscious or whatever it is recognizes a slight deviation from the ideal path, produces a sense of discomfort, and now we can just scroll our way out of it rather than listening to what that alarm is telling you. Do that a few times, it won't make any difference to your life at all, but do that consistently as a habit over the course of 10 years, and you'll be an entirely different person than you would have been. It won't be for the better. So yeah, I think it's really good to just make a practice out of putting away all your devices, all your entertainment, and just sitting in a room for half an hour to an hour just with your thoughts, just seeing what actually bubbles up when it's got the space to, because that can tell you a hell of a lot. You'll learn more important shit doing that than you will from even reading books. Like, the most of the answers that are genuinely relevant to you in your life come from inside you, not from outside. I was having a conversation the other day with a guy. He was like a Buddhist monk. He was out here in Bali, and I was chatting to him. He did like 6 hours of meditation a day for like a decade, and then ended up becoming a fucking Python developer of all things. But yeah, I was talking to him about why I was reading so much Nietzsche and finding it so hard to put down the pages. And I was saying I was just trying to figure this thing out about myself. And he was like, oh yeah, but you're not going to find that in the book. And I was like, yeah, good point. Yeah, good point. Like, personal questions are almost always going to be resolved from looking inward rather than anything you learn externally. The external stuff like what you'll learn in The Righteous Mind and from Nietzsche and Carl Jung, lots of that is going to help you build a framework to interpret the experiences you have in introspection, and that can be beneficial. But the core source of relevant information is usually introspection, not extrospection, if that's even a word. Oh, this is a big one. Can you give any tips on how to do something even if you're not feeling like it? This is like the perennial fucking problem of humans. It's so hard to solve because it's so simple. Like, it's really simple. You do the thing or you don't do the thing. The reason it's so hard is because of the way we construct our sense of self. This is something that I think Nietzsche brought onto the table, into the conversation when he started writing, which is that your sense of self is a story. And it's written in reverse. It's written in hindsight. So he posited the idea that the self was not like an atomized entity. It wasn't a single entity that makes free will decisions. The self was actually a collection of biological impulses that are all at war. So your sexual impulse, your hunger impulse, your impulse towards power, your impulse towards friendship, your impulse towards relatedness and status, and all of these things that you are magnetized towards are like gods battling within you. They're like impulses that are at war for control over your actions, and they will fight each other because oftentimes, there's an infinite possible array of actions you can take at any given moment, and there has to be some schema by which you filter through that infinite array of possibilities to the singular action that you actually do take. And that generally, people think it looks like, oh, I'll think about it rationally and I'll calculate what's the most beneficial option to me. But that's not what's happening at all. What's happening is you're in a biological war internally for the different impulses. And then whichever one wins, you will then, the ego, the sense of self, that story will identify with that winning impulse. It'll say, I chose to do that. That's where the I comes from. It's like a personal equivalent of history as written by the victors. Like, there's this war of all your different biological impulses. One of them will win, and then it will write the history in the history books that was you that made that decision. You identify with the victim. And when there's something that you know you should do, but you don't want to do it, say you have two options. I could watch more Netflix, one more episode, or I could go to the gym. It's hard to do the thing that you actually should do because there isn't really any you there. It's just a collection of impulses. One of those impulses says, preserve your energy, watch Netflix right now, take gratification now. And the other one says, delay gratification, go to the gym, because you want status and sex and all the other things that come along with having a better physique. And whichever impulse wins out at that given time will determine the action that you take. Then the question becomes, okay, is there anything we can actually do to increase the odds of the delayed gratification impulse winning more often? I think there is, yes. The only thing you can do is use your imagination, your intellect, in order to feed imagery to your subconscious mind that will tilt the balance, tilt the scales a little bit of which impulse gains executive authority over your body in that moment. So, say you're sitting there and you're like, I could watch more Netflix, or I could go to the gym. It's like there's this war inside you now of two impulses fighting for control. If you start thinking about and visualizing yourself looking in the best shape you've ever had, with loads of girls all around you, and your dad saying he's proud of you, and you're bench pressing twice your current PR and all of that, and you really imagine that, then your body will begin to have a more positive emotional association with the idea of going to the gym, which will just essentially, you'll be feeding the impulse towards delayed gratification instead of the impulse towards instant gratification. Because you are not a rational creature, you're an emotional creature, and so if you want to make the right decisions, you have to prime yourself to maximize the odds that you experience a more positive emotion in relation to the more healthy action. That's just about all you can do. And it won't even work most of the time, but sometimes it will, and those little 2 degrees shifts of trajectory, 100 miles down the line, create a large separation. So it's important to not fall into a sense of futility when considering how little control you actually have over your own actions, because you don't need to have some massive revolution where you become the most high agency, autonomous being that can make the perfect rational decision all the time. You just need to make slight adjustments, and that will shift your trajectory massively if they remain consistent. But yeah, that is the $1 million question. If people could do things that they didn't feel like doing at will, then we would live in a fucking utopia right now. But we don't, because we're not like that. We're not rational. Do you agree that delusion can be a positive thing in the right circumstances? For example, a self-made millionaire who started in the third world country or poverty who had the delusion and achieved it. 100%. I'm going to go way too deep on this. But there's a guy called Donald Hoffman, I believe. I haven't looked at his stuff in a while, so I forgot. But he's got a book, Case Against Reality, I believe it's called. But he basically proves, using mathematics and game theory, that your entire reality of perceptions that you're exposed to day to day is one of those useful delusions. It's actually not evolutionary advantageous for the brain to conceptualize an inaccurate representation of reality. It's evolutionary advantageous, meaning it would be selected for falsity, not accuracy, which is fascinating. And from that one piece of information alone, you can logically derive that the same would apply not of your perceptions, like sight and smell and stuff, and temporal location and spatial understanding, but it would also apply to all of your beliefs. In fact, depending on your views on epistemology, which is the study of where knowledge actually comes from, you have to factor in all of those falsities to begin with, because your sense perceptions are predominantly the streams through which you get the information that is then pieced together into your beliefs. So all of it is tainted from the beginning. It's all delusion. But we start to lose the meaning of the word when we take it in that direction. So to bring it back to something a little bit more sane, there can be a greater or lesser alignment between a representation of reality and the reality that it represents. The greater the alignment, the higher the truth factor of that representation is. And generally speaking, there will be a correlate between truth and utility. Just like how having a map that doesn't accurately map the world that you're in isn't going to be very useful. At the same time, having a map that shows absolutely everything, all of the atoms that make up all of the sand on the beach that I'm currently on, would be way too much information, and it also wouldn't be useful. So we have to falsify to some degree in order to, I don't know if falsify is the right word there. I said I was going to go too deep. I went too deep. Let's bring it back to what you said, which is about poor people reaching a state of wealth because they were delusional enough to believe that it could happen. Yeah, I don't know if that's delusion. I'm going to hit you with a really cringy and overused quote to summarize this, which is, he who believes he can and he who believes he can't are both usually right. That's why I don't think it's delusion. When did you become such a cutie? This is a question from my friend Vori, who lives out in Bali. He gives YouTube advice. I'll link his channel in the description. Dope guy. Does life have meaning? Honestly, who fucking cares anymore? Okay, I think we're good. I'm gonna get back to editing. I've been working on a video about the culture war, which I'm a little bit afraid to release because I know it's a sensitive topic. But YOLO. Holy shit. I have no fucking clue what's going on. So many kites in Bali. Alright, I'm gonna call it there. This is a lovely sunset. Okay, thank you for 50k. I'll see you at 100. Peace.